We need to talk about the American dream, or at least the version of it that feels like a subscription service you forgot to cancel 3 years ago. You know the formula. It's been whispered in your ear since you were old enough to hold a crayon. Go to school, get the grades, land the job with the 401k that you don't understand, buy the house with the lawn you'll spend your Saturdays hating, and eventually, if you play your cards right and the economy doesn't have a midlife crisis, you get to retire and finally learn how to play pickleball. It sounds safe. It sounds like the responsible thing to do. It's the adult equivalent of wearing a helmet while walking on a carpeted floor. But have you noticed how the finish line keeps moving? It's like chasing a mechanical rabbit at a greyhound track, except you're the dog, and the rabbit is actually just a bill for a kitchen remodel you didn't even want. We've been sold this idea that security is the same thing as freedom, but honestly, those two things aren't even on speaking terms. Security is a warm blanket that's slightly too short for your feet. Freedom is being able to throw the blanket out the window because you own the thermostat. Most of us are so busy trying to keep the blanket that we never notice the window is locked from the outside. We've traded our independence for the illusion of stability, and we did it because we were told that's what making it looks like. It's the great middle-class bait and switch. You're told that if you follow the path, you'll be set. So you follow it. You get the degrees that cost more than a small island. You get the job that requires you to care about things like synergy and deliverables, while your soul gently leaves your body during a Tuesday morning Zoom call. And for what? For a life that feels like a very high-end waiting room. We're all just sitting here, drinking lukewarm corporate coffee, waiting for a future that feels more like a myth than a destination. The real kicker is that this whole setup isn't designed to make you rich. It's designed to make you manageable. A person with a massive mortgage, a car payment that rivals a small country's GDP, and a burning need to keep up with the Joneses is a person who isn't going to rock the boat. You can't quit the job you hate when your lifestyle is held together by LinkedIn endorsements and sheer desperation. We've become the architects of our own polite little prisons, and we decorated them with stuff from Target to make it feel more like a home. It's funny, in a I might cry into my overpriced avocado toast kind of way. We spent our 20s trying to get the life we thought we wanted, and we're spending our 30s and 40s trying to figure out why we're so tired. We were promised a payoff that never quite arrives. It's always just over the next promotion, just past the next bonus, just on the other side of the kids graduating. We're living for a someday that is constantly being rescheduled. And the worst part? We think we're the only ones feeling this way. We see everyone else's highlight reel on social media, the vacations, the new SUVs, the smiling families in matching sweaters, and we assume they've cracked the code. Spoiler alert, they're just as stressed as you are, they just have better lighting. We've collectively agreed to participate in a race where the prize is just the permission to keep running. We replaced the goal of being truly free with the goal of being comfortable, and in the process, we forgot that comfort is just another word for being stuck in a very soft chair. We stopped asking if we actually liked the life we were building and started asking if it looked good to people we don't even like. It's a quiet limitation, a slow-motion tightening of the leash. You don't wake up one day and realize you're trapped. You just wake up and realize you haven't felt like the protagonist of your own story in a decade. You're more like a supporting character in the story of your own debt. And that realization hits harder than a Sunday night when you remember you have a 7 a.m. meeting about a spreadsheet that shouldn't exist. We've been conditioned to fear the unknown so much that we've embraced a known that is slowly draining us dry. It's the safety trap. It feels like a hug until you realize it's actually a wrestling move. And until we admit that the formula is broken, we're just going to keep adding more variables to an equation that's designed to equal 0 every single time. We're playing a game where the rules were written by people who want us to stay exactly where we are, paying our bills on time, and never asking why the ceiling feels so low. It's time to stop wondering why the promise hasn't paid off and start wondering why we believed it in the first place. Because the real question isn't whether you can afford the lifestyle. It's whether the lifestyle is worth the price of your life, especially when that price tag seems to go up every time you get a 3% raise and a good job sticker from upper management. It starts so innocently, doesn't it? You get that first real promotion, the one where the salary actually has 5 digits, starting with something other than a 1, and you celebrate. You should celebrate. You've been living on instant noodles and hope for 3 years. You deserve a decent meal that doesn't involve a microwave. But then, the upgraditis sets in. It's a silent airborne pathogen found in the vents of new apartment complexes and the leather interior of German cars. You start thinking that since you're a senior associate now, you probably shouldn't be sitting on a sofa you found on a sidewalk during senior year of college. You need a real sofa. A sofa with a name. A sofa that costs more than your first car and requires a specialized cleaning kit that you'll lose within 48 hours. Suddenly, your lifestyle begins to expand to fill the container of your new income, like a gas or a particularly aggressive house mold. You move into the place with the floor-to-ceiling windows, because apparently you need to see the city you're too busy working to actually enjoy. Then comes the car. Your old reliable rust bucket performed perfectly fine, but it doesn't exactly scream success when you pull into the office parking lot, does it? So you trade it in for a monthly payment that looks like a mortgage for a small house in the Midwest. You tell yourself it's an investment in your image, which is just corporate speak for, I'm terrified of people thinking I'm broke. This is where the cage starts to grow its bars, and they're plated in 24-karat gold. We call it lifestyle inflation, but that sounds too academic. Let's call it what it really is: a luxury hostage situation. You've essentially kidnapped your future self and held them for ransom, demanding they keep working a job they tolerate just to fund a version of you that likes expensive candles. We live in an EMI culture where everything is broken down into low monthly installments, which is the financial equivalent of being nibbled to death by ducks. It's only $90 a month for the gym you never go to. Only $200 for the phone that does the exact same thing as your last phone, but has 1 extra camera lens for taking pictures of your cat. Only $400 for the furniture. Before you know it, your entire paycheck is spoken for before it even hits your account. You're essentially a middleman for your creditors. Your employer hands you the money and you pass it directly to the bank, the car dealership, and the streaming service you only keep because you're halfway through a show you don't even like. And then there's the social comparison, the ultimate joy thief. You're doing great until you see that your old high school rival just posted a photo of their new kitchen island. Suddenly, your kitchen, which was fine 10 minutes ago, looks like a crime scene from a 1970s sitcom. You need quartz. You need a backsplash that tells a story. You need a refrigerator that can tweet. We aren't even buying things for ourselves anymore. We're buying them to signal to people we haven't spoken to in a decade that we aren't failing at life. It's a performance, and the tickets are ruining our credit scores. We've been taught that comfort is the ultimate goal, but comfort is actually a very dangerous sedative. It makes you heavy. It makes you slow. It makes you afraid of any change that might disrupt the flow of premium air conditioning and high-speed internet. When your life is built on a mountain of commitments, the housing upgrade, the private school tuition, the necessary organic grocery bills, you lose your ability to say no. You can't say no to the toxic boss. You can't say no to the 60-hour work week. You can't say no to the soul-crushing project that keeps you up until 2 a.m. You are a prisoner of your own comfort. The weight of family expectations adds another layer of brick to the wall. You want your kids to have the best, so you sign them up for travel soccer, violin lessons, and coding camp for toddlers. You're trying to give them a head start, but you're doing it by running yourself into the ground. You're teaching them that the good life is a frantic scramble to maintain a certain zip code. We've turned providing into performing, and the stress is becoming a hereditary trait. It's funny how we think we're getting ahead because the numbers on the screen are getting bigger, but the gap between what we earn and what we must spend stays exactly the same. We're just on a faster treadmill wearing more expensive sneakers. You realize that your dependency hasn't decreased since you were making entry-level wages. It's actually compounded. Back then, you could have survived on a shoestring. Now, you need a high-tensile steel cable just to keep from falling. You've built a life that is so nice, you can't afford to actually live it. You're just the highly paid caretaker of a lifestyle that owns you far more than you own it. And the most terrifying part isn't that you're stuck, it's that you've started to find the cage quite cozy, as long as the Wi-Fi signal is strong and the neighbors are impressed. But that pride starts to taste a little metallic when you realize you're essentially a high-performance athlete in the sport of treading water. You finally hit that six-figure milestone, the one you thought would make the clouds part and the angels sing. But instead, the only thing that happened was your taxes got more complicated and your urgent emails started coming in at dinner time. It's a weird, modern paradox. You're making more money than 90% of the humans who have ever walked the earth, yet you're still checking your bank app before you buy the premium gas for the car you bought to show off the money you don't actually have. The reason you feel stuck isn't that you're bad at math. It's that you're playing a game where the map is drawn in disappearing ink. We've been conditioned to focus entirely on salary growth, believing that a bigger shovel is the only way to get out of the hole. But a bigger shovel just means you can dig a more impressive hole. Most high earners are trapped in the time leverage trap. You're selling your hours for dollars, and even if those hours are now worth $500 a pop, you still only have 24 of them in a day, and at least 6 of those are spent dreaming about spreadsheets, or that one time you tripped in front of your crush in 11th grade. You're an elite artisan of the 40-hour work week, which, let's be real, is usually a 60-hour work week once you factor in the quick pings and the soul-sucking commute. You've mastered the art of trading your life force for a paycheck, but you've never learned the art of making that paycheck do the work for you. That's the structural difference between income and wealth. Income is a stream. If you stop walking, the stream eventually runs dry. Wealth is a reservoir. Most of us are so busy trying to widen the stream that we never bother to build the dam. Think about it. You're a disciplined professional. You do everything right. You max out the 401k because the HR lady with the weirdly aggressive cardigan told you to. You save a little on the side. You don't buy the $5 latte every single day, only on Tuesdays when the existential dread is particularly spicy. And yet, if you stopped working tomorrow, your wealth would probably last you until about next Thursday, maybe Friday if you switch to generic brand cereal. That's because you're relying on time leverage, while the people who actually escape the trap are using asset leverage. You're trying to run a marathon to get to the moon while they're building a rocket. We've been taught to be workers, not owners. Even the highest paid surgeon or the slickest corporate lawyer is just a very fancy worker if their lifestyle requires them to keep performing surgery or filing briefs until they're 70. You're not rich. You're just a well-fed hostage to your own expertise. And let's talk about the psychological tax of high earning. The more you make, the more you feel you have to protect. You're no longer worried about paying rent. You're worried about wealth management, which is just a fancy way of saying you're paying someone else to tell you why your money is disappearing slower than it would if you kept it in a mattress. You've moved from survival anxiety to status anxiety. And trust me, the second one has much better marketing, but it's twice as exhausting. You're stuck because your income is tied to your physical presence. If you aren't in the seat, the money stops. You've built a life that requires a 100% attendance record just to maintain the status quo. It's like being the lead singer of a band where you also have to play the drums, the guitar, and sell the merch at the back. It doesn't matter how loud the applause is, you're one sore throat away from total silence. We see the successful people around us and we copy their symptoms, the houses, the vacations, the watches, without ever copying their underlying structure. We buy the output of wealth instead of the engine of wealth. We're so focused on the finish line of retirement that we don't realize we're running in a hamster wheel that's been bolted to the floor. You're doing everything you were told to do, but the math isn't mathing because the formula was written for a world that doesn't exist anymore. You're a high-earning professional who is one bad performance review away from a nervous breakdown, and deep down, you know it. You're not building a foundation, you're just building a very tall tower out of Jenga blocks and hoping the wind doesn't blow. And the wind, as we know, has a very dark sense of humor when it comes to people who think they've finally figured it all out, which is why we need to stop trying to outrun the storm and start changing the shape of the boat. Most people think the only way out of the middle-class cage is to blow everything up, to quit the job, move to a hut in the woods, and start a podcast about the healing power of moss. But that's just swapping one set of problems for a much itchier, bug-infested set of problems. The real escape isn't about quitting your life, it's about changing the ownership structure of your time. It starts with a shift from seeking comfort to seeking optionality. Comfort is a static state. It's that soft chair that eventually gives you back pain. Optionality, however, is a muscle. It's the ability to look at a situation and realize that you don't have to stay. We've spent so much energy building a life that looks impressive from the sidewalk that we've forgotten to build a life that feels light on the inside. To get there, you have to stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like a shareholder of your own existence. Instead of pouring every extra dollar into a lifestyle upgrade that will be obsolete by next Black Friday, you start buying back your freedom in small, deliberate increments. Maybe it's not a massive real estate empire right away. Maybe it's just building enough of a cushion so that losing your job goes from being a life-ending catastrophe to being this is an annoying 6-month sabbatical situation. That psychological shift alone is worth more than any kitchen island. When you stop being desperate, you start being dangerous. You can negotiate differently. You can speak up in that meeting where everyone else is nodding like bobbleheads. You can breathe. We need to redefine what early retirement actually means. It's not about sitting on a beach until your brain turns to sand at age 35. It's about early autonomy. It's reaching the point where your work is a choice, not a ransom payment. This happens when you stop focusing on salary and start focusing on assets, things that work while you're sleeping, things that don't care if you have a cold or if you're having a midlife crisis, whether it's a side business, a portfolio, or just a radical reduction in your necessary costs. The goal is to detach your survival from your next 40 hours of labor. As you start to look at your life through this lens, the whole landscape begins to shift. You realize that the standard success formula we talked about at the beginning, that safe helmet-wearing path, was actually the riskiest move of all because it left you with zero control. All those golden bars we built into our cages through lifestyle inflation, they start to look like what they really are, just metal. Expensive, shiny metal that we can choose to melt down and forge into a key. The high earners who feel stuck, the families running the travel soccer gauntlet, the professionals trading their souls for synergy, everyone is just looking for the same thing, the feeling that they are the protagonist again. We've been supporting characters in the story of our own debt for too long. But when you redesign your life around control, instead of just more comfort, the tension starts to resolve. You're no longer chasing a mechanical rabbit. You're just a person walking at your own pace on a path you actually chose. It's a strange feeling, realizing the exit was never locked. We just had our hands too full of stuff to turn the handle. So, look at your bank statement this week, not as a record of what you spent, but as a map of where you're giving your power away. Ask yourself what you're actually buying, and if it's worth the hours of your life you traded for it. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Have you ever felt that moment where the dream started to feel like a shift you couldn't leave? Drop a comment and let's talk about it. It helps to know we're all trying to figure out the same puzzle. If this resonated with you, maybe leave a like on the video. It helps the channel more than you know. And if you want to keep hanging out and pulling back the curtain on these truths, go ahead and subscribe. It's good to have you here. Take it easy on yourself today. You're doing better than you think. Catch you in the next one.